The clock had barely struck midnight, but the weight of the night pressed heavily upon me. I sat alone in the living room, the dim light of the table lamp casting long shadows across the walls. The house was eerily silent, and the stillness felt unnerving, almost suffocating. I had always prided myself on being able to stay calm in times of stress, but tonight, something felt off. The phone call had come out of nowhere, jarring me from the comfort of my thoughts. My mother's voice, usually a source of warmth and assurance, was shaky, fragile. "Can you come to the other room?" she had asked, her words laced with an unfamiliar urgency. "I need help." It wasn't the request that rattled me, it was the tone. There was a panic in her voice, a fear I had never heard before. My mother had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together, no matter how tough things got. She had always been the rock I leaned on, the person I could rely on to fix everything. But now, it was me who had to step in. I took a deep breath, my heart racing in my chest. "What's going on?" I asked, but she only repeated the request. There was no time for further explanation, no time for anything else. I stood up and walked down the hallway, my feet echoing against the hardwood floor. The house, though familiar, felt different tonight, darker, more oppressive. The dim light from the hallway spilled into the bedroom, where my mother was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale and drawn. Rachel was there too, sitting in the corner of the room, her face buried in her hands. She was always strong, always so composed. But tonight, she looked broken, vulnerable. This wasn't the sister I had known, the one who could always put on a brave face. Something had shifted between us in recent months, and I didn't know how to fix it. I closed the door softly behind me and walked toward them, my eyes shifting from one to the other. My mother looked up, her eyes wet with tears, but her expression was more than just sadness. There was something deeper there, guilt, fear, something I couldn't place. I sat down beside her, my gaze moving from Rachel to my mother. "What's going on? What do you need?" I asked again, though a part of me already knew the answer. Whatever was about to unfold in this room would change everything. Rachel finally lifted her head, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I don't know what's happening, but I think we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky but resolute. I looked at my mother, whose gaze was now fixed on her lap, her hands clasped tightly together. The weight of the moment was too much to ignore. "I'm so sorry, son," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted you to know, but you need to hear this now." I could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. This was it, the moment I had feared for so long. Secrets were about to come to light, and nothing would ever be the same again. My heart hammered in my chest as I braced myself for what was to come. The truth was coming, whether I was ready for it or not. And then, my mother spoke the words that would shatter everything. "I need help, with something that I can't undo," she said, her voice breaking. I froze, unsure of what she meant. What could she be talking about? Was this something I could fix? Or had we already crossed a line that could never be uncrossed? Rachel's eyes met mine, filled with unspoken understanding. I felt the weight of her gaze, like a silent plea for me to figure this out. But how could I? How could any of us? "Help me," my mother whispered, her voice cracking as she reached out to take my hand. "Please. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything is fine." In that moment, I realized that this was no ordinary call for help. It was a cry for something deeper, something more complicated than I was prepared to understand. I looked at both of them, my mother, who had always been the glue holding us together, and my sister, who had been so distant for so long. And in that moment, I knew that whatever came next would change the course of our lives forever. But how could I help them? How could I fix this? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing: I was going to try, no matter what. As I sat there, holding my mother's trembling hand, the weight of the situation pressed down on me. There was no going back now. This was a family at a crossroads, and I had no idea what lay ahead. The silence in the room grew heavier, and I realized that the answers I sought were not going to come easily. But the questions, those would linger long after the night had passed. And so, I waited, the air thick with unspoken truths, wondering just how deep this wound really went. The morning after the conversation in the bedroom, everything felt the same and yet entirely different. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft beams of light across the living room floor. It was a typical, quiet Sunday morning, but the storm from the night before still lingered in the air, suffocating the peace. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, staring blankly at the half-empty mug. How was it possible for everything to feel so normal when so much had changed? I couldn't shake the image of my mother's face, the fear and guilt etched deeply into her expression. I need help with something that I can't undo. Those words kept echoing in my mind, replaying over and over, each time carrying a little more weight. I hadn't gotten much sleep. The questions were consuming me. What was it that she couldn't undo? What had happened to us, to this family? And most importantly, why hadn't I seen the signs? Rachel's absence from the morning routine was a stark reminder of the emotional chasm between us. She was still in her room, where she had locked herself away since our confrontation. I couldn't blame her. There was a part of me that wanted to shut myself off from it all too. But I knew I couldn't. Not now. I had to find out the truth. As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, I heard the soft creak of footsteps approaching the kitchen. I looked up to see Rachel standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She hadn't changed much since the night before, her eyes were still bloodshot, and there was a hollow sadness in her gaze. "I don't know what to say," she began, her voice low and uncertain. "I don't know how to fix this. We can't just pretend it didn't happen." Rachel nodded but didn't move. "What if we can't fix it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if we're too broken to put back together?" I stared at her, my heart aching. I had always thought of us as a strong family, capable of weathering any storm. But this felt different. The fabric of our family was unraveling, and I wasn't sure how to stop it. Before I could respond, the sound of my mother's voice interrupted the moment. "We need to talk," she said from the doorway, her voice strained. I looked at Rachel, and she looked back at me, both of us knowing that the conversation we had been avoiding for so long was now inevitable. We followed my mother into the living room, the air thick with tension. She sat down in the armchair, her hands folded in her lap, and motioned for us to sit. "There's no easy way to say this," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I've made mistakes, huge mistakes. And I need to come clean. I've been hiding things from you both for far too long." My pulse quickened as I leaned forward. My heart pounded in my chest, but I refused to look away. I needed to hear the truth. Whatever it was, I needed to understand. Rachel stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the floor, her fists clenched tightly in her lap. I could feel the distance between us growing, the fracture deepening as my mother continued. "I had an affair," she said, the words coming out in a rush, as though she had been holding them back for too long. "With someone close to this family." She paused, her eyes glistening with tears. "And it was wrong. I know that now. But at the time, I felt so lost. So empty. Your father had been distant for so long, and I didn't know how to cope. I thought I was in love with him, but it was a lie. I was just running away from myself." The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in as I processed her words. An affair. My mind raced as the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Who was she talking about? Who had she betrayed us with? My father? Our family? I could feel my anger rising, my heart torn between disbelief and betrayal. But then something inside me froze. If my mother was telling the truth, then she was confessing more than just a mistake. She was admitting to a deep, profound fracture in our family, one that could never be repaired. Why didn't you tell us? I finally managed to ask, my voice tight with emotion. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with regret. I was ashamed, she whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want you to see me this way. But now, I realize I've already hurt you both, and I can't undo it. I sat back in my chair, the weight of her confession pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to process what I was hearing. My mind kept circling back to the same questions. How long had this been going on? How could she have kept it from us? Rachel's voice broke through my thoughts. Was it him? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I could see the pain in her eyes as she spoke the name of the person she was dreading. The man who had been a part of our lives for so long. A family friend. My mother nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. Yes, it was him. And I'm so sorry. I should have never let it happen. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. A silence settled over us, thick with grief and confusion. I couldn't look at her anymore. The betrayal felt too raw, too real. It was as if everything I had known about my family had been turned upside down. I stood up abruptly, the tension in my chest unbearable. I need some time, I said, my voice barely audible. Without waiting for a response, I walked out of the room, not sure where I was going, only knowing that I needed to escape. I walked out the front door and into the quiet of the yard. The cool air hit my face, but it did little to ease the storm that was raging inside me. My mind was reeling, the shock of my mother's confession still sinking in. How could she have done this? How could she betray us so completely? But as I stood there, looking out at the empty street, something shifted inside me. The anger and the hurt were still there, but beneath it, a small flicker of understanding began to emerge. My mother wasn't perfect. None of us were. But we were family, and no matter how much we had been broken, we still had each other. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't even know if it could be fixed. But I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't walk away from them. Not now. Not when they needed me most. I took a deep breath, wiped away the tears I didn't realize I'd shed, and turned back toward the house. We had a long road ahead of us, but we'd have to walk it together. As I walked back into the house, I found Rachel sitting by the window, staring out at the street. Her eyes were distant, lost in thought. She looked up at me as I entered the room, her expression unreadable. I think it's time we talked about what happens next, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. But before I could respond, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. I froze, the air thick with anticipation. Who could it be? And why did it feel like everything was about to change again? The answer would come soon enough, but for now, the uncertainty of what lay ahead loomed over us, casting a long shadow on our already fragile family. The doorbell echoed again, sharp and jarring, slicing through the silence that had settled like a thick fog over our house. I stood frozen in place, the weight of the moment pressing on my chest as Rachel and I exchanged glances, both of us uncertain of what came next. It was as if the universe was conspiring to push us past the limits of what we could bear. Rachel stood up first, walking slowly toward the door. I followed her, my heart racing in my chest, but my feet feeling heavier with each step. We both knew that nothing would be the same after whatever happened next. The answers we were seeking might not be the ones we wanted, but they were coming, whether we were ready for them or not. She reached for the doorknob and hesitated, glancing back at me. "Do you want to open it?" she asked softly. Her voice was thick with the residue of last night's revelation, the weight of her emotions evident in the tremor of her hands. I shook my head, unable to find the words. I couldn't bring myself to face whatever, or whoever, was waiting outside that door. Rachel, braver than I was in that moment, took a deep breath and opened it. Standing there was a figure I had hoped never to see again, our family friend, Frank. He was the one my mother had confessed to having the affair with, the man who had been like a second father to us, the man we had trusted, the man who had shattered everything. His face was lined with age and regret, but there was still a calmness in his posture, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. He looked up at Rachel and me, his eyes filled with an apology that rang hollow. "I need to talk to your mother," Frank said, his voice rough with emotion. "Please, let me in." I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind racing. The moment we had been dreading had arrived. Frank was here, and he had come to face the consequences of his actions, or perhaps to escape them. I wasn't sure which. But one thing was clear, his presence in our home now was the final piece in this unraveling puzzle. Rachel, her face unreadable, stepped aside to let him in. "She's in the living room," she said quietly, as if this were just another ordinary day, as if the world hadn't just collapsed around us. As Frank stepped inside, I remained at the door, unwilling to follow. I wasn't ready to hear the rest of this story, wasn't sure if I even wanted to know. But I had no choice now. My family was splintering, and there was no turning back. I walked back to the living room, my mind still spinning. The words my mother had spoken the night before, the confession, the pain in her eyes, were still fresh in my mind, like an open wound that hadn't had time to heal. I could hear Frank and my mother talking quietly in the background, their voices muffled, but the tension in the air was palpable. Rachel followed me into the room, and we sat in silence, waiting. I didn't know how much more of this I could take. But I knew that we were about to hear the truth, the full truth, and whatever it was, it would finally tear down the walls we had built to protect ourselves from the hurt. Frank stepped into the room first, his eyes briefly meeting mine before he sat down. He looked weary, as though he had carried this burden for far too long. And then my mother entered, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. The weight of everything she had been hiding was written all over her. "Thank you for letting me in," Frank said, his voice heavy with regret. "I know I've done a lot of damage. I never meant for any of this to happen." My mother nodded, her hands trembling as she folded them in her lap. "We've all made mistakes," she whispered. "But some mistakes can never be fixed." Rachel looked at me, her gaze filled with a quiet sorrow. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words got caught in my throat. I didn't have the answers. I didn't even know what I wanted to happen next. There was no guidebook for situations like this, no step-by-step solution for fixing a family torn apart by betrayal. Frank looked down at his hands, as though searching for the right words. "I was wrong," he said, his voice strained. "But it's not just the affair I'm sorry for. It's the way I've hurt you both, hurt all of you." My mother, her voice breaking, spoke up. "We all made choices, bad choices. But now, I have to live with the consequences." She paused, tears spilling from her eyes. "And I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself." The silence that followed was suffocating. I could feel the anger and the hurt bubbling up inside me, but there was no outlet for it. The flood of emotions that had been building for so long now seemed like a tidal wave, ready to consume us all. Finally, I found my voice. "What do we do now?" I asked, my words rough and raw. "How do we move forward from here?" Rachel turned to me, her face softening with understanding. "Maybe we don't move forward," she said quietly. "Maybe we just need to sit in this pain for a while. Maybe that's the first step." And as I looked around at my mother, at Frank, at Rachel, I realized she was right. There were no quick fixes. No easy answers. Our family was broken, shattered, and there was no magic solution to make it whole again. But in that moment, I understood something important. Healing, if it was ever going to happen, had to begin with acceptance. We weren't perfect. We had been broken by choices, by mistakes, by things that couldn't be undone. But we were still family, and maybe that was enough to start the slow, painful process of rebuilding. But just as I was beginning to feel a glimmer of hope, the doorbell rang again. This time, there was no hesitation. This time, I knew that the world was about to throw another curveball at us, one that would test everything we had left. As I turned to answer the door, I couldn't help but wonder, how much more could we take? I opened the door slowly, my heart still heavy with the weight of the conversation we had just had. But as I saw the figure standing on the doorstep, my breath caught in my throat. Standing there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, was someone I hadn't seen in years, the one person who had always held a key to a family secret I was still too afraid to face. And just like that, I knew that the story wasn't over. It was only beginning. The door swung open, and standing there was someone I never expected to see again, someone I had hoped would stay buried in the past, their presence nothing but a shadow that haunted the edges of my memories. But now, standing in front of me, was the man who had once been my father's best friend. The man who had been like an uncle to me. His name was Ethan, and he was the person who had first introduced Frank to our family. A man I had admired as a child. But now, in the wake of everything that had come to light, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story than he had ever shared. Ethan's appearance had changed. His once strong frame had withered, and the years had taken their toll on his face. His hair was graying, his eyes tired, but there was still something in his posture that spoke of the power he had once held. Something that told me he knew exactly what was going on in this house, and perhaps, he always had. He stared at me for a long moment before speaking. "I know this is unexpected," he said, his voice gravelly, betraying the calm exterior he was trying so desperately to maintain. "But there are things that need to be said. Things that can't wait any longer." I stood there, frozen, unsure of how to respond. My mind raced, trying to understand why he was here, why now, after everything that had happened, he had decided to show up. Rachel, still standing behind me, seemed equally stunned but quickly composed herself. She glanced at me, her face a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Why are you here?" Ethan sighed, looking past us into the house, as if he were searching for something. "I've been living with the weight of this for too long," he said quietly. "And I can't pretend anymore." The room seemed to grow colder, as if the walls themselves were closing in on us. I looked back toward the living room, where my mother and Frank were sitting, their eyes now wide with unease. They had already shared their secrets, and now, it seemed, Ethan was here to add his own. "We need to talk," Ethan continued, his voice steadier now. "There's more to what you've been told. More than any of you know." I stepped aside, allowing him to enter, though my body was still frozen with shock. He walked past me, his gaze briefly meeting mine, before turning his attention to my mother and Frank, who now looked equally unnerved by his arrival. He took a seat across from them, his eyes never leaving my mother's face. "I think it's time we all came clean," he said. "The whole truth." My heart pounded, the anticipation thick in the air. What could he possibly know? What more was there to uncover? My mother, who had been silent until now, spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, please. This is already too much." But Ethan wasn't deterred. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together as if preparing to reveal the deepest of secrets. "It's not just about the affair," he said, his words slicing through the room. "It's about what happened before. Before Frank came into your life. Before all of this." Rachel looked at me, her face pale, her hands trembling. She had been holding it together, but now, even she couldn't deny the weight of the conversation. The ground beneath us was shifting, and with each passing second, I feared we were sinking deeper into a well of buried truths that we might never escape from. "I was there," Ethan said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I was there when it all started, when things began to fall apart. I saw the cracks forming in your father's marriage, and I knew the kind of damage that was being done. But I did nothing. I stood by and watched, thinking I was helping in my own way. I couldn't breathe. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if I was even standing anymore. What was he talking about? What had he seen? My father's marriage? What damage? My mother turned her face away from him, her eyes brimming with tears, but she said nothing. I saw the guilt in her eyes, the burden she had carried for so long. But now, with Ethan's words, it was as if the floodgates had opened. More truths were coming, and nothing could stop them. Frank, who had been silent up until now, shifted in his seat, his eyes darting nervously. "Ethan," he started, his voice tight, "you need to stop. This is too much." But Ethan was already on a roll. "No," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "I've spent too many years hiding, too many years pretending that nothing happened. Your father wasn't the only one who was blind to what was going on. I knew. I knew exactly what was happening between you and my wife, but I never said a word." The room went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face as my mind tried to piece together the impossible truth. My mother's affair wasn't just with Frank. It was with Ethan's wife, the woman who had been a part of our family for as long as I could remember. My mother's betrayal wasn't just a betrayal of my father. It was a betrayal of Ethan, a man who had trusted her, a man who had been there through it all, only to be blindsided by the same secrets. I looked at my mother, my eyes searching her face for some sign of explanation, but she refused to meet my gaze. The pain in her eyes was unbearable, and I suddenly felt the distance between us stretch farther than I had ever known. "Ethan," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "what are you saying? What does this mean?" "It means," Ethan began, his voice trembling, "that we've all been living in a web of lies. And it's time we faced the truth, no matter how ugly it is." The air in the room grew thick with tension. There were no words left. The truth had come crashing down on us, and the pieces of our broken family lay scattered at our feet, impossible to put back together. I turned to Rachel, who looked just as lost as I felt. "What do we do now?" I asked her, my voice barely audible. Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to take my hand. "I don't know," she said quietly. "But we have to face this. We have to face each other." And as the weight of Ethan's confession settled over us, I realized that we were no longer just a family. We were a group of people, each carrying our own secrets, our own betrayals, and our own brokenness. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure: we couldn't keep running from the truth. We had to face it, no matter what it cost. As I sat there, staring at my family, I thought the worst was behind us. But then the doorbell rang again. This time, it was different. This time, I knew that the next person to walk through that door would change everything once again. The only question that remained was, who else had been a part of the web of lies we had woven? And how much further would this spiral go before we were beyond saving? The doorbell rang, echoing through the house like a death knell. The air in the room grew even heavier as the sound of it reverberated in my chest. I turned to Rachel, my heart racing, wondering who could possibly be at the door now. Was there anyone left who hadn't played a part in this tangled web of deceit? Had the lies really come this far? "Ethan," I whispered, my eyes wide with disbelief. "Who else is there?" Ethan's face was drawn, tired, like a man who had reached the end of a long road. He seemed to have expected this moment, as if he knew all along that there would be someone else. Someone who would come, bringing the final piece of this terrible puzzle. "Please," my mother whispered, her hands trembling as she reached out to him. I can't do this anymore." Ethan's expression softened for a moment, and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We don't have a choice anymore," he said quietly, his voice heavy with sorrow. "We've all been living in the dark for too long." I stood up abruptly, my mind whirling, unable to make sense of anything anymore. "Who's at the door, Ethan?" I asked, the frustration in my voice impossible to ignore. "What else is there to know? Haven't we uncovered enough? He looked at me, his eyes tired but unwavering. "The truth isn't always what we think it is," he said. "But sometimes, it's the only thing left to set us free." I walked toward the door, my legs feeling like lead, each step heavier than the last. What else could be waiting for us? What more was left to uncover? I opened the door, and my breath caught in my throat as I looked at the person standing there. It was a man I hadn't seen in years, a man who had once been my father's closest confidant. His name was Victor, and he had been a ghost in my life for as long as I could remember. He was the man who had vanished without a trace, who had disappeared without a word, leaving behind nothing but questions. The man who, in all my years, I had believed to be a casualty of a past long gone. But there he was, standing on the doorstep, looking exactly as I remembered, though somehow older, wearier. The same sharp eyes, the same steely resolve. The man who had once held so much power in our family's life, but whose absence had only ever been explained by vague, uncomfortable silences. "Victor," my mother gasped, her face draining of color. Victor's gaze flicked to her, and for a moment, there was something in his eyes, something unspoken. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced by the cold, calculated expression that I remembered so well. "How much longer were you planning on keeping this a secret?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "I told you, you can't outrun the past forever." I stood there, speechless. My heart was pounding in my chest as the weight of the situation settled over me. The past that had been buried for so long was now resurfacing, and it was dragging us all down into its darkness. Victor stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room, resting briefly on each of us, as if taking inventory of the damage done. He stopped in front of Ethan and my mother, his lips curling into a faint, bitter smile. "I'm sure you're wondering why I'm here," he said, his gaze hardening. "But it's simple, really. There are no more secrets left to hide. The time has come for all of us to face the truth, whatever it may be." I could feel my pulse quickening, a cold sweat forming on the back of my neck. The world around me seemed to slow down as the pieces of our broken family were finally coming together. But what was the truth? What was the final revelation that would bring all of this to a head? Victor's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something different in them, an understanding, a sorrow that mirrored my own. He didn't speak for a long moment, but when he did, his words shook me to my core. "It was never just Frank and your mother," Victor said, his voice so low that I had to lean in to catch it. "There was always more going on. Something much darker. Something that none of us could control." My breath caught in my throat, and the room seemed to spin around me. What was he saying? Was this all just some twisted game? Some cruel joke? Or was there something more, a deeper conspiracy, waiting to be uncovered? "You see," Victor continued, "the truth is that all of us, Ethan, Frank, your mother, even me, we've been trapped by the lies we told ourselves. We were all complicit in this web of deception. But it goes back farther than any of you realize. Back to a secret that was buried deep in this family's history. A secret that none of us ever thought we'd have to confront." I felt the blood drain from my face as his words sank in. My mind was reeling, trying to piece together the fragments of truth, but it was too much, too fast. "My father," I whispered, the realization hitting me like a freight train. What did he know? What wasn't he telling me? Victor's gaze softened, and for the first time since he arrived, there was a flicker of genuine regret in his eyes. "Your father knew. And he tried to protect you from the truth. But that protection came at a cost. We all paid the price for that." I stumbled back, my heart pounding, my mind struggling to make sense of everything. It felt like the ground had shifted beneath me, like I was standing on unstable ground, unable to trust anything I had ever known. "What is this secret?" Rachel's voice was steady, but I could see the fear in her eyes. "What do you mean, a secret that goes back even further?" Victor's eyes turned dark as he looked at my mother. "Some things are better left unsaid," he said, his voice thick with finality. "But I've spent too many years living with this lie. And now, it's time for all of us to face the consequences. The room was silent, the weight of Victor's words hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. And then, just as the tension seemed unbearable, my mother spoke, her voice barely a whisper, filled with more regret than I had ever heard before. "You're right," she said. "There's something I've been hiding. Something I've never told any of you." She paused, her breath shaky. "And it's time you knew the truth." The final bombshell had been dropped. And with it, everything we had ever known, our family, our past, our very lives, was about to be torn apart.